You think love conquers all. How naive. Machiavelli would laugh at your romantic delusions. The cold truth is that poverty destroys more marriages than infidelity, lies, and incompatibility combined. Tonight, we dissect why the master strategist himself warned against the union of hearts when pockets are empty. By the end of this video, you'll understand the brutal calculus of matrimony that society refuses to teach you, and why ignoring this wisdom could be the most expensive mistake of your life. In every age, alliances shape destiny more than love ever will. And yet, modern people walk blindly into marriage with empty pockets, swollen emotions, and no understanding of power. Machiavelli warned us, men forget more easily the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. So imagine the disaster when a man with nothing marries, hoping love will compensate for weakness. Today, you will learn why getting married while poor is one of the most dangerous strategic mistakes a person can make, and how power, stability, and control must be built before you think about binding your life to another. When Machiavelli warned that people judge more by what they see than by what they feel, he was revealing a truth that destroys countless marriages before they even begin. Respect is the foundation of every long-lasting union. But poverty, even before the wedding, quietly erodes that foundation grain by grain until nothing remains but disappointment and hidden resentment. When you enter a relationship without wealth, you enter it with a deficit of power. And whether people admit it publicly or deny it in their fantasies, power determines how you are treated far more than affection ever will. Watch carefully how people behave. A person who appears strong, stable, and secure will be spoken to with caution. Their opinions are considered, their presence is valued, and their boundaries are respected. But a person who appears weak, struggling, or financially unstable receives a different treatment entirely. Their voice is softer, their choices questioned, their existence tolerated rather than admired. Poverty does not just limit your resources, it limits how the world perceives you. And in marriage, perception is everything. Imagine entering a relationship where every decision requires negotiation, where every desire must be measured, where every plan depends on what you can afford rather than what you envision. Love may begin with warmth, but as soon as financial strain enters the room, that warmth cools faster than ice. It starts subtly, a comment about money, a sigh after a bill, a frustrated look when something cannot be bought. None of these moments are explosive on their own, but together they slowly weaken the respect between partners. A poor person becomes associated not with potential or strength, but with the constant reminder of what is lacking. Machiavelli understood that nothing breeds contempt faster than dependency. When you are poor, you often depend on your partner for support, stability, or direction, even if they do not complain. Even if they reassure you with kindness, the human mind quietly keeps score. Over time, the partner begins to see themselves as the one who carries the weight, and you become the one who must be carried. This imbalance of power poisons admiration, and once admiration dies, love loses its character. People rarely confess this truth, but they feel it deeply. It is difficult to respect someone who cannot provide, protect, or plan. The world rewards those who stand firmly on their own feet, not those who cling to another person for survival. When you marry poor, you enter the union with a handicap. You may believe your love is strong enough, but love does not erase the psychological burden of scarcity. Every moment of financial stress becomes a blow to your dignity. Every sacrifice becomes another piece of respect that slips away. Every setback becomes a question of your capability. And then comes the quiet emotional shift. The partner who once saw you with admiration begins to speak more sharply, question your ideas more openly, and rely less on your judgment. You start to sense it, the subtle loss of authority, the slow erosion of influence, the fading of that deep respect that once held the relationship together. Poverty makes you replaceable, forgettable, easy to blame, and easy to dismiss. Because when resources are scarce, affection becomes conditional. When respect is fragile, even small problems become unbearable. In marriage, love is not what preserves respect. Respect is what preserves love. And when poverty destroys that respect, the relationship loses its anchor, its stability, and the sense of partnership that makes two people stronger together than they are alone. Poverty is already a cage you wake up inside every morning. It limits your choices, steals your confidence, and dictates your actions long before you even realize it. But marriage, when entered from a position of weakness, does not free you from that cage. It reinforces the bars. Machiavelli understood that true freedom only exists for those who command their own resources, who have the power to walk away, who do not depend on another person for survival. When you are poor, you do not walk into marriage as an equal. You walk in as someone negotiating for air. Look at the life of a man with limited means. Every decision he makes is bound by the fear of losing what little he has. He cannot think boldly. He cannot plan freely. He cannot take risks. Poverty forces him to play life defensively, always reacting, never directing. And when marriage enters the picture, his margin for error shrinks even further. He now carries not only his own burdens, but the expectations of someone else. A mistake that affects only him transforms into a mistake that impacts the entire household. With every new responsibility, his autonomy fades. The same is true for a woman entering marriage without financial independence. She becomes tied to the economic stability of the relationship, trapped in a cycle where her choices are limited by dependency. Even small disagreements turn into power struggles, because when one person controls the financial lifeline, the other must tread carefully. The imbalance becomes a silent ruler over the relationship. Freedom is no longer defined by what you want, but by what you can afford. People idealize marriage as a union of love, but Machiavelli would tell you, it is a political alliance disguised in romance. Alliances require leverage. Without wealth or stability, you have none. And when you lack leverage, you become vulnerable to influence. The partner with more control, whether financial, emotional, or social, begins to steer the relationship. They choose where you live, how you spend money, what risks you can take, and sometimes even what dreams you are allowed to pursue. You may think you are deciding together, but in truth, the boundaries of those decisions are shaped by scarcity. Marriage multiplies the consequences of poverty. Every bill becomes a negotiation, every financial setback becomes a crisis, and every emergency exposes how little control you truly have. You cannot make bold moves when the fear of losing stability chains your thoughts. You cannot take time to grow when survival interrupts your focus. You cannot speak freely when your partner controls the resources you depend on. And the more time passes, the more you feel the walls closing in. In poverty, disagreement is dangerous. The poor cannot afford conflict, because conflict risks losing support. So instead of expressing feelings openly, you suppress them. Instead of setting boundaries, you tolerate more than you should. Instead of making decisions based on values, you make decisions based on necessity. And slowly, your identity begins to shrink under the weight of compromise. You become someone who reacts instead of leads, someone who endures instead of chooses. Machiavelli warned that dependency puts a man at the mercy of another's will. In marriage without wealth, this dependency becomes inevitable, whether anyone acknowledges it or not. The partner with financial control gains the ability to influence choices, behavior, and even the direction of your life. They may not use that power maliciously, but power does not need to be malicious to be restrictive. It simply needs to exist. This is the quiet truth no one admits. Marriage does not save the poor. It anchors them even deeper in their limitations. Poverty narrows your world, and marriage, instead of expanding it, compresses it further. The freedom you believe you will gain through companionship is replaced by obligations you are not prepared for, responsibilities that outweigh your capacity, and expectations that suffocate your sense of self. Machiavelli observed that loyalty endures only as long as needs are met. This principle applies with brutal accuracy inside a marriage, where daily survival depends not on feelings but on function. Love can ignite quickly, but it burns through fuel just as fast, and when poverty enters the home, it starves that fire until only resentment remains. At first, the couple believes that closeness, affection, and emotional connection will be enough. They promise each other that love will conquer every difficulty. They cling to the illusion that emotional warmth is stronger than the cold reality of financial pressure. But the truth is far more ruthless. Every day, needs rise like a tide: food, bills, rent, responsibilities, and the constant demand for stability. These pressures never sleep. They return each morning heavier than the day before. And the moment one partner realizes that the other cannot meet these needs, admiration begins to crack. Respect begins to fade. A new tone enters their conversations, a tone sharpened by frustration. It starts slowly, almost invisibly, a sigh after looking at the bank account, a quiet disappointment when a dream is postponed again, a subtle irritation when an unexpected expense appears. These moments do not explode at first, they accumulate. Each one is a drop of acid that dissolves the bond. When people are stressed by poverty, their patience shortens, their kindness declines, their tolerance shrinks. A couple that once laughed together suddenly finds themselves arguing over small things because the bigger problem, lack of money, overshadows everything. It is not the argument about dinner or chores or schedules that causes the damage. It is the unspoken truth behind every argument: we do not have enough. Machiavelli understood that human emotions are transactional. People give affection when they receive stability. They give loyalty when they feel protected. They give kindness when they feel secure. But when insecurity becomes the daily atmosphere of the household, emotions shift into darker forms. The partner who once saw you as their hope now sees you as their obstacle. Every unmet need becomes a quiet attack on your worth. Every unresolved financial issue becomes a judgment on your capability. Soon, both partners begin to feel trapped. The poor person feels the crushing weight of failing to provide. Their partner feels the exhaustion of living in constant scarcity. Love becomes conditional, tied to whether the next bill can be paid. Conversations that once brought closeness now revolve around calculations, sacrifices, and compromises. Instead of dreaming about the future, they fear it. Instead of planning growth, they plan survival. And survival mode is the enemy of romance. Resentment does not appear as yelling. It appears as silence. It appears as distance. It appears as the absence of admiration. When one partner feels they are carrying too much, the other begins to feel like a burden. And the moment one person feels like a burden, intimacy begins to crumble. Poverty erodes the very qualities that once brought two people together: enthusiasm, optimism, confidence, warmth. It replaces them with anxiety, fatigue, and frustration. The relationship becomes a battlefield where both sides feel outnumbered by circumstances they cannot control. Love becomes something each partner wants to feel, but cannot. Not because the feeling is gone, but because the conditions no longer allow it to breathe. And before they realize it, the couple who once believed they could conquer the world together wakes up feeling defeated by their own home. Machiavelli understood a truth that most people today refuse to face. The weaker you are, the more predictable you become. And nothing weakens a person's strategic judgment more than poverty. When you are poor, you do not think with ambition, clarity, or long-term vision. You think with fear. You think with urgency. You think with desperation. And desperation is the easiest emotion to manipulate. A desperate man becomes obedient. A desperate woman becomes compliant. Poverty steals not just your resources, but your ability to choose freely, speak boldly, and act with confidence. In a marriage, this becomes even more dangerous because the stakes are no longer personal, they are shared. Every decision you make now affects someone else's life, and that pressure pushes you into choices you otherwise would have rejected. You may stay silent when you should speak, accept demands you should reject, or tolerate treatment that chips away at your dignity. You do it not because you are weak at the core, but because poverty forces you to protect the little you have left. And when you fear losing stability, you surrender your power inch by inch without even realizing it. Notice how people behave in moments of scarcity. They cling to the familiar. They avoid conflict. They agree to conditions that do not serve them. They apologize for things they did not do wrong. They shrink themselves to avoid confrontation. This is the psychology of survival, not leadership. When you enter marriage while poor, you carry this survival mindset with you, and your partner, intentionally or unintentionally, becomes the dominant figure in the relationship. The person with more financial security becomes the decision maker. They decide what is practical, what is possible, what is allowed. They set the rules without ever declaring them, and you follow because your circumstances leave you no alternative. This imbalance becomes fertile ground for manipulation. It may be subtle at first, a suggestion disguised as concern, a criticism framed as advice, a financial lecture masked as responsibility. But slowly, these patterns tighten around you. Suddenly, you are being told how to spend your time, who to trust, what opportunities you should or shouldn't pursue. Not because your partner is necessarily malicious, but because money grants authority, and authority naturally evolves into control. You begin to internalize the idea that your value is smaller, your position is lower, and your role is to comply rather than to lead. You second-guess every decision you want to make because you fear the consequences of being wrong. You stop pursuing your goals because every step requires negotiation. You limit your potential because your circumstances limit your voice. Poverty makes you easy to persuade and easier to silence. And as the pressure builds, you start making decisions that betray your own future. You may take jobs beneath your skills simply to keep the household functioning. You may abandon personal ambitions because they seem unrealistic under financial stress. You may accept emotional treatment that erodes your confidence, all because leaving or even resisting seems impossible. Machiavelli warned that when a person relies too heavily on others, they lose not only their freedom but their identity. Marriage entered from a place of financial weakness becomes a slow surrender of identity. This is where the true danger lies. Manipulation in poverty does not appear as overt control. It appears as necessity. You obey because you feel you must. You compromise because you fear the alternative. You stay quiet because conflict is too expensive. And every day, the version of yourself you hope to become grows more distant, replaced by a version shaped by scarcity, obligation, and pressure. This is why entering marriage without power, without stability, without resources turns you into someone who navigates life on your knees instead of your feet. Machiavelli observed that people are loyal only when it serves their interest, and they shift their allegiance the moment circumstances change. Marriage is no exception. When you are poor, you become dangerously replaceable, because poverty strips you of the qualities that make a partner feel fortunate to be with you. The brutal truth is that attraction is not just emotional, it is political. People want to align themselves with strength, not struggle. They want a partner who elevates their life, not one who adds more weight to it. And when a person realizes their marriage does not elevate them, their loyalty begins to crack in silence. This is where insecurity enters the relationship like a hidden enemy. Poverty creates a deep sense of uncertainty in both partners, but it affects you in different ways. The poor partner begins to fear losing the relationship because they believe they cannot attract better. They begin to overgive, overplease, and over-explain. They monitor their partner's moods, fearing every sign of disappointment. They tolerate behaviors that disrespect them. They accept dynamics that rob them of dignity. They become clingy, anxious, constantly seeking reassurance, yet never receiving enough to feel secure. Meanwhile, the partner who is financially stronger begins to feel the shift in power. They may not intend to misuse it, but human nature responds instinctively to imbalance. When one person constantly carries stress and the other constantly apologizes for it, the stronger partner begins to feel superior. They start making decisions unilaterally. They become less patient, more critical, and less emotionally available. And the more they sense insecurity in the poor partner, the more they interpret it as weakness rather than devotion. This is how betrayal enters, not suddenly but gradually, through emotional withdrawal. It begins with shorter conversations, colder responses, and less effort. It evolves into decreased attraction, reduced intimacy, and a growing sense of distance. The poor partner becomes someone who must prove their worth, while the wealthier partner becomes someone who must be convinced to stay. And the moment a more stable, more confident, more resourceful person enters their orbit, the comparison becomes inevitable. Machiavelli would tell you that people defect when they see better opportunity elsewhere. In marriage marked by poverty, opportunity becomes temptation. The partner starts imagining how life would be without constant financial stress. They begin comparing your struggles with someone else's stability. They start seeing the relationship not as love, but as limitation. And once a person sees you as a limitation, loyalty dissolves, even if they never express it openly. This emotional instability also breeds jealousy, suspicion, and paranoia. Both partners begin wondering if the other is losing interest. The poor partner fears abandonment. The wealthier partner fears being dragged down. and fear becomes the third resident in the house, sitting at the table, sleeping between them, whispering doubts into both minds. Love cannot thrive in an environment where both people are trying to survive emotionally and financially at the same time. Even moments of calm become fragile. One unexpected bill, one argument, one financial setback can trigger a wave of insecurity that feels impossible to control. Poverty magnifies every conflict, turning minor issues into major threats. And the more unstable the relationship feels, the more both partners begin imagining escape routes, either emotionally or physically. They begin asking themselves questions they never dared to ask in the beginning. Can I do better? Am I settling? Is this relationship stopping me from having the life I want? This is how poverty silently dismantles the psychological bond between two people. Not with loud fights, but with quiet doubts. Not with explosive betrayal, but with mental drift. Not with dramatic actions, but with subtle shifts in loyalty, attraction, and desire. In the absence of stability, the relationship becomes a fragile structure built on fear rather than trust, and fear eventually destroys whatever love tried to protect. Machiavelli understood one principle that governs both nations and relationships. Stability is built on resources, not romantic promises. When a person enters marriage without wealth, without direction, and without control over their own life, they step into a union without the foundation required to sustain it. Marriage is not just companionship. It is an institution that demands strategy, endurance, and the ability to absorb unexpected blows. But poverty turns every unexpected event into a crisis and every crisis into a fracture. Imagine a household where both partners dream, but neither can afford to execute those dreams. The frustration becomes suffocating. Aspirations feel like mirages, visible but unreachable. And as days turn into months, those dreams begin to decay, leaving bitterness in their place. The couple slowly realizes that their marriage is no longer about building a life. It is about preventing it from falling apart. They are not constructing a future. They are attempting to patch holes in the present. And when life becomes a series of emergency repairs, love becomes a luxury emotion that no one has the energy to maintain. The reality is that a household without financial security becomes a battlefield of unsolved problems. Every setback becomes a question mark over your competence. Every struggle becomes an argument waiting to happen. Every failure becomes a weapon in moments of anger. And slowly, the marriage transforms into a space where both partners begin measuring each other's worth not by love, but by what they contribute, or fail to contribute, to survival. This is where the psychological damage deepens. Poverty robs people of momentum. Without progress, a person loses their sense of purpose. Without purpose, they lose their self-respect. And once self-respect erodes, the relationship suffers because no one can love another person from a place of self-hatred. When you enter marriage without stability, you risk becoming a version of yourself you do not recognize, resentful, defeated, anxious, and insecure. Your partner begins to see it, you begin to feel it, and the relationship becomes an emotional graveyard where both people mourn the potential they once believed in. Machiavelli warned that individuals who cannot control their own circumstances become victims of them. In marriage, this is amplified. Without financial strength, you cannot take bold steps. You cannot make long-term plans. You cannot protect your partner from stress. You cannot shield your household from chaos. You become reactive instead of proactive, always responding to problems instead of preventing them. you live in survival mode, and survival mode destroys the emotional connection that marriage relies on. Instead of growing together, you grow apart. Instead of building unity, you build resentment. Instead of imagining a future, you fear it. And in this environment, cracks appear everywhere. Communication becomes defensive, effort becomes inconsistent, attraction becomes unstable, admiration disappears. You begin to wonder why the passion is fading, why conversations feel forced, why silence feels heavy, and why every minor inconvenience turns into an argument. It is because the relationship has lost its foundation. Marriage cannot thrive on struggle alone. It needs progress, stability, direction, and mutual confidence. Without these, love suffocates under pressure it was never designed to carry. Eventually, one or both partners begin contemplating escape, not because they stopped loving each other, but because they cannot survive the constant emotional strain. Marriage becomes a reminder of limitations rather than a symbol of partnership. The home becomes a place of obligation, not comfort. The future becomes something to fear instead of something to build. Poverty does not just challenge the relationship, it rewires it, reshapes it, and slowly destroys the emotional architecture that holds it together. What begins as love slowly transforms into exhaustion, a shared heaviness neither partner knows how to lift. And the tragedy is that both people may still care deeply, but care alone cannot repair a structure built on unstable ground. Do not enter marriage from a position of weakness. Enter only when you can command respect, control your life, and protect your future. So before you marry, build your wealth, build your discipline, build your power. Because when you are strong, marriage becomes a partnership. But when you are poor, marriage becomes a prison you locked yourself inside.